Yu-Gi-Oh is getting its next biggest power creep in the coming months. And it's going to reshape Yu-Gi-Oh beyond recognition. Hey guys, this is Tom Box, and today we're going to be talking about what Yu-Gi-Oh card design has to offer to the new wave of top-tier decks, in-engine hand traps. Now, I'll get into the meat of that in a second. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, well, don't worry. I'm going to demonstrate how this power creep is going to be played out in the future with a couple of quick demos. But firstly, I must admit that, hey, there are different playstyles in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! And with the different playstyles, there are different contributing factors to making a deck successful. But ultimately, I simplified it down to 5 major factors that make a deck meta. Number 1, spreadsheets and people who make them. I'm just kidding, okay? But they are very useful, and you still have to play so you don't fall behind. But no, for real, a quick summary of the 5 factors that make up a top tier deck for me. Really good card economy, extremely good resilience. There's just out of this world consistency. Most of the starters are also extenders. They have a small engine size and everything has a generic starting point. And then the hand traps. Their hand trap selection is just so good and so relevant to the format, and the ability to disrupt on turn 0 is just so important. But you also need to kind of balance it with one card combo. If you're going to be shoving like 50 bajillion hand traps, well, guess what? They also have one card combo, so that means like they have 2 starters and they're starter extenders, and then they have 3 hand trap. You know the game is going to be very, very tough for the opponent because you're going to be able to play through most things. And then the weakness will just depends on the deck build, right? It depends on the format. Unless you're playing a rogue deck, then you hope that your weakness isn't the trending common disruption that everyone's already main decking. You know, like Drone Lockbird versus like a Drytron deck right now, something like that. And today's power creep subject is in-engine hand traps, the ability to play on turn 0. Now, we've had a taste of this before through a little-known deck called Tearlaments. Definitely not a tier 0 deck. Now, when Tearlaments was at its peak, this deck was insane because of the sheer number of disruption that they had against you. They had like Tearlaments Havness, Tearlaments Kashtira, both of these triggering a mill, and because there's so many like mills that would lead to like fusion summons, those fusion summons would have triggers, or they would lock you up because it's cards like Winda. It's like, even though you went first, you're sharing a turn with your opponent, and because you don't have anything established against your opponent, the worst part is it almost feels like you're going second, but you don't have a battle phase. And then they get to play their turn with everything already established and their hand already loaded with like awesome cards that they were just going to directly search, because no one's ever going to droll themselves on their own turn for no good reason. Of course, during the Tearlaments format, it was tier 0. They were clearly the best deck because they did more than anyone else. And not only that, they had more opportunity to do more because they got to play on both players' turns. Now, if you didn't like Tearlaments format back in the day, I'm not sure if you're going to really like the upcoming format because the trend is starting to look very, very similar. K9's, Vanquish Soul, and Draco Tail. K9 will have Izuna, which will give us the rank 5 on turn 0. Vanquish Soul will offer us Holy Angel, and that's going to be like, depending on what your hand is, it's going to either blow up 2 cards or maybe just take control of it so that you can't combo. Or Draco Tail, they just full on fuse on your turn with Femenia. It's pretty wild, and I'm going to showcase to you guys how each of them are going to work. But ultimately, OCG Land has already proven that this particular style of play is the strongest. They have the most amount of representation. They're going through their WCQ right now, and if you take a look at this list, courtesy of Road of the King, yeah, there's a lot of this stuff happening. And guess what? We're about to enter a what-if universe where everyone can play on turn 0. At least all the meta decks. Now, for our glimpse into the future, we're going to start things off with Draco Tail, then move on into Vanquish Soul and finish it off with the K9. So, Draco Tail, the ability to fuse. This is Draco Tail Femena, and it offers you the effect to fuse during the opponent's turn into any dragon or spellcasters. Okay, well, how good could that be? Well, I'm going to show you guys within their own engine the ability to play during the opponent's turn. Say my opponent builds up 2 monsters here, and I don't want them to go any further. So I'm going to activate Draco Tail Femena, and I'm going to fuse from my hand. I'm going to use an Ash and a Draco Tail Pawn. And usually, if you're going for disruption, you want to use the Draco Tail dragon-based monsters in your hand, Muller, Pawn, and Arugula, because they have additional effects aside from just setting up your field. So this is how it's going to work. And I'm going to fuse into Altherian. Alternatively, if you want to pop an additional card, then you might want to go for Grammel instead. But this one can miss if your opponent chooses to chain. So I summon Altherian. What does this card do, Tom? Well, it just lets you bounce back cards based on the number of materials you used in your hand. Since I used 2 materials, I get to bounce back 2 cards, and it bounces from the field and the graveyard. So Chain Link 1, I'm going to target the Ancient Fairy Dragon and my Ash Blossom. so I can put Ash Blossom back in my hand as an additional disruption. Chain Link 2 to insulate that. Let's go for Draco Tail Pawn, because Draco Tail Pawn can destroy a card on the field, non-target, but before I do that, I have to do what all other Draco Tail materials have to do to get that effect, which is to set up a card onto the field. So you get to take a Draco Tail spell or trap and set it directly onto the field. This is Ketu, this is the Rhoda of the deck, but there's also like a branded fusion of the deck, which is Ratu, and that's pretty wild, being able to do that during turn 0. Imagine your opponent just goes into their deck and just digs a branded fusion during your turn for free. So kind of the same thing. So we're going to set this onto the field, and I'm going to destroy the Roselia. And as a part of the Chain Link 1, I'm going to add Ash back into my hand and also bounce away the Ancient Fairy Dragon. And so I went from 3 cards in my hand, right, to 2 cards on the field and 1 card in my hand. And this card also comes with a little bit of recursion in the graveyard. So you know what? That was not that bad of a trade, considering that 2 of my opponent's cards were also answered along the way. So this is for Draco Tail. Next, we have Vanquish Holy Sue. That's coming out, I believe, in Duelist Advance. And this is a proxy copy that I made just for the demo of this video. So yeah, it's obviously not tournament legal. I can't even get you focused. There it is. So here it is. All I want to do is clear off my opponent's board, and with the right attributes, namely you need a dark and a fire to get the best use, but you can also use a dark and an earth. You have to pair essentially Holy Sue with something dark, all right? And here it goes. So say I don't want these to be on the field anymore. I'm going to activate Holy Sue. I'm going to reveal a Vanquish Soul monster to summon herself out. Summon away from these columns, because you need to use Raisin in this one. So you summon her out as a quick effect during the main phase. And now in the quick effect here, again, you activate her, and then you reveal a dark and a fire. This lets you summon out your Vanquish Soul monster that isn't a psychic onto the field. I'm going to summon out Raisin. Raisin on the field, on summon effect, let's add the Caesar Valius into hand, or you can get Heavy Borger, whatever that you really want. And so Raisin effect, okay, aside from the add, now we're going to quick effect, we're going to reveal a dark and a fire, destroying every single monster in that column, destroying the Roselia. And I don't like the Ancient Fairy Life either, so I'm going to choose to activate the Vanquish Soul Caesar Valius. I'm going to return the Holy Sue into hand, special summon out the Caesar. I have all 3 attributes. I have Earth, Fire, and Dark. I'm going to reveal all of these to my opponent, and I'm going to destroy this with a non-targeting effect. And I still have an Ash Blossom that I've constantly flashed at my opponent, so they know what's going on. That's the power of just this part of the engine. And finally, for K9s, here's a proxy of K9 number 17, Izuna. And this is gonna be likely one of the most sought after cards in Justice Hunters, because it's a hand trap engine that's also key to the engine that lets you play during the opponent's turn. And it's generic, it doesn't have any restriction, as long as your opponent activates a monster effect in their hand or in their graveyard. So for instance here, my opponent activates Roselia summons from graveyard, that's an activated effect. Now these are turned on. Lupus and Izuna are now turned on. If you want to play the most minimal engine, you just play 3 copies of Izuna and 1 copy of Lupus. It's almost like your Psyframe, Gamma, and your 1 driver, except that at least this card can summon itself out. So how does it work? Let's put this into the deck. And so here's the Izuna. They just summon Roselia, activate Izuna, summon out Izuna effect, send Lupus into the graveyard because they activate a monster effect from hand or graveyard. Lupus can summon itself out but vanish it when it leaves the field. But Lupus also carries the effect to a quick Xyz summon, so we're doing that. So we're going to do a quick Xyz, and that gives us now options. Essentially, your hand trap lets you get access into your extra deck, and you have a Book of Moon-esque effect with Valen, the Psychic Skyblaster. You can insulate yourself from hand trap and continue your play and get yourself additional search with the Ripper. And you have Nash Knight, which is a form of removal that doesn't really trigger anything, because if you go for Nash Knight, you can use a quick effect, detach both, and then you can attach like a Masquerade, and then just attach your opponent's card as material. I believe that effect does not target, so which is really good. And furthermore, you can really just transform your monsters into a Chaos Xyz monster later on if this survives. Okay, but let's take a step back. What about the other ones here? Valen is so useful for disruption because you can just book a monster, turning off their ability to synchro, to Xyz, to link, and that usually can cripple a whole turn sometimes. And the Ripper is just, you know, the part that can get you even more cards, and usually leads to a little bit of hand ripping if you do it right. But yeah, that's what this is offering. Like, it's such a tiny package to play just for more disruption, and you can just mix it together with the Vanquish Soul. So now you're disrupting like almost like 3 to 4 cards without even using like one of those regular hand traps. And remember, we're doing this during the opponent's turn 1, our own turn 0. And on top of that, they might have to heat additional hand traps that I have in my hand because I didn't really commit that many cards to disrupting them. So it could be like 3 disruptions without any commitment. And to some people, that might just be too much. As a result of most of these top tier in-engine hand traps being summon-based effects, cards like Dominus Impulse will likely see a rise in value because they're able to stop the play. Much like if your opponent tries to use a Mulcharmy on you, you can throw an Ash on that play. Then if your opponent uses an in-engine hand trap to do the summon, to do the disruption, you can use a Dominus Impulse to stop that. And decks that can use Dominus Impulse will likely also see a bit more success as well. But I do hope that the card does get a reprint soon because it's gonna have a huge influx of demand in the near future. You know, for an old school duelist looking into the game, you know, rather than having like a new card frame that they don't understand, now they're not even going to recognize the very first turn of the game. Well, that's the quick glimpse of the future that I want to give to you guys. Now, before I close out this video, I have a question for you all. How is this effectively going to affect the ban list? What if these engines are too strong or they make the game too stale? Are they going to ban these in-engine stuff to kind of keep it in control? Or are they going to hit our mainstream hand traps that are much more generic so that maybe they can keep on cycling different rounds of hand traps in this game? I don't know. Just, you know, food for thought right there. And all I want to say is thanks for watching. If you guys enjoyed this video, hit that like button, hit subscribe, and ding that notification bell. Appreciate you all for doing so. And this is Tom Box, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.